The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard. Once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I, dhatu, up to dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Te ata om gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Baba Gunjo Zonji Gaiden Vidoji Vadoji Me Vadoji Vadoji Dogi Vaji Me Dombe Judonji Lingo Yezo Angiri Andonya Jejo Yewada Medono Bejanda Nevada Dombaru Nimbunzon Zonyo The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Yedam Guru Radha Mandala Ganiradayami. Saji Janam La Janjo Badu Dani Jazuji Nagi Janye Jebe Zonam Jidrola Benje Zanye Rovayo Yadan Zoji Janam La Janjo Badu Dani Jazuji Nagi Janye Jebe Zonam Jidrola Benje Zanye
당가서 되는 바로바로 지혜는 말이야. 당가서 나주 못해서 당가 제단다 추당 어디서 추수로 다 추다 대화용하게 치도 어디 다르지라 추라디 말 추 말봐 다 이주지다 이루고 추다 나주다 어디서 그걸로 멜레 대지용하게 제도 추석은 인사드바 너가 뭐야도 대지와 어디를 기제도 로지 추지라고
Let us begin with the word religion or dharma. What is the purpose, or what is religion or dharma? Religion or dharma is for an individual to be able to create the cause of happiness of some sort. So in looking at different religious traditions, if we look at Christianity, if we look at Hinduism and look at Buddhism, all of these religious traditions have in common this idea of how to abandon suffering, how to get rid of the causes of that suffering and be able to achieve happiness. So all religious traditions have this common goal of creating the causes for happiness.
어떤 추루 비트제 그 상도와 단계진 더 되어 말바 추루 비트제 그 상도와 도와제다 도와제도 줘봐줘서 말바 다 도와제데 단계진 녀와에다 돈으로서 비제다 되어 인상 계제제다 되어스 네 녀와로서부터 제바 있는 추루가 그렇게 말다 다시 녀와 좋아 돈을 지내서 좀 이다주도 이다주도 있는 송송제 안에 유타고도 좋아지 유타고도 좋아 가서 출마돼서 되는 인사를 유타고도 좋아 라로 좋아서나 최다살 제바 있나야한테는 최케 말하게 되는 인사를 어떤 지갈래갈래 쉬는 말을 라로 좋아 하스림을 제바 있나한테는 주로도 말해서 말을 하스림 잘 하스림인데 santen jibi shuji na wa jaken da wadana mundu marbe ta ombo masawa tin me bada na me bada anju yomba wadana jeba ina chudu to marba da wad da bi je tanga su tedu yesa chudu bin gejen kan tedu waris marbe
luta
loba da yu ta ku jo lal jo lazir ombo ban ta lu ban ze bodin bare ta lu ban ze ba 안에 레주도 매버도 지왕하신 매버도 이렇게 램베 로다 여바 있나 주제도 말하다 야
So we currently in looking at the practice of Dharma and looking at what happiness is, we can look towards the 8 leisures and 10 endowments, or 8 leisures and 10 opportunities. So in the Lamrim Chenmo, it's called leisure and opportunity. So these are fortunate states. These are states from which one can engage in the practice of religion. So this is why they are considered fortunate, because they're from this basis of a state of leisure or endowment, one can engage in religious practice. So it's the following: not being born as a hell being, a hungry ghost, or an animal. So these are 3 of the 8 leisures. Not being born with wrong views. So wrong views such as not believing in past lives or future lives, or there is no karma and its results. So basically having real specific wrong views. Being where there is no conqueror's word, or where there is no word of the Buddha. Being born where there is no word of the Buddha. So that is 5. Having it says a stupid or mute person on Wambo Matsawan, having improper faculties or a problem with one's faculties is the next one. So that's 3, 4, 5. Being born as a barbarian person is the next one. So being born somewhere where in a barbaric land. It's, red. It went red. It was green. It went red for some reason. Is that battery? I think it's battery, right? Celsius. Celsius. Yeah, go ahead and do that. So we all set? So the let me just long views okay, so the 8, just I want to go over the 8 in full list again. Being reborn with wrong views, being reborn where there is no conqueror's word, without the word of the Buddha, where their teachings aren't present, being born as an animal, being born as a hungry ghost, being born as a hell being, being born as a barbarian, uncultured person in a border region, being born as a stupid or mute person, but again, that's someone with faulty faculties of some sort, and then being a long life deity. So faulty faculties would mean these are bases. So these are all bases from which there's difficulty in practicing Dharma. So if one, and the faculties is referring to if someone can't hear or if someone can't see to read. A long life deity would be, for instance, there are many different examples of long life deities, but for the fourth concentration level and above, there are many different categories. But these are deities that live a very, very long time. So these are all conditions from which practicing Dharma is not easy. So the opposite are states of leisure. And these are what we would consider happiness, these 8 states of leisure, which are the opposites of leisureless states that make it impossible to practice Dharma.
ane wada dinaki nubi rikangalo megu was marba gejen tan trawa so de mare yantul naya ge wada yoba ina kujetu marba gejen tan trawa ane shingal gejen ga meba ina ku tuje masana sabyon tan chodan luda ga chane je was one ga chudubi tuje do wada joba jode ban joba jode gejen tan tre ane joba jo 다당가도 상도에 상도는 추주비 대야버려도 하지 말be 내가 술을 된데 예진을 하버서 되다 말be yeah.
So the 8 conditions are conditions from which one can practice Dharma. Just as a field, for instance, it has to have from it removed certain trees and rocks and so forth in order for it to be worked on, in order for it to have a crop that one can harvest. One has to remove certain things and create a specific ground that not fertile is not the word, but an appropriate type of ground that one can then grow things from. So these 8 conditions are like that ground that serve as a basis from which one can practice Dharma. So these are why they are called conditions. And then the opportunities are what, once one has these conditions, what one can do, how one moves forward. So having these conditions, and then what the next steps are. So there are 10 opportunities that follow the eight leisures. So the 8 leisures are conditions from which one can practice Dharma.
다때는 추르비 퇴제 가르상 오르스나 퇴제 라그가 상오르스 근데 제군은가 라그는가 된데 말이야 매니 의제 원부창 매니 벌써 가서 말해도요 의유스 제와스나 최다사 글로벌 제와라 의유스 제와스 네 코나지 조사기 코나지 좀 아주 찾아봐 있나더니 의유스 제가를 가버려 최다사를 제와 인소상 안가서 의유스 제와스 잔디그레스 어때 자바이나는 가서 의유스 제와래는 도와 최다사를 제도요 봐 매니 의제 원부창 원부당가서 매다 나와서 도서글로게 매 아주 매기 동거라 아주 고고요래 되는 생산 동아요래 원부창서 어떻게 말해 매니 의제 원부창 레타말로 참매게 레마지 말해 파마세발로서 참매게 레마지 봐스 파마세발로서 참매게 레셔바이나 레제 탈롱 버스 내라 대스나 넬 대스나 도알 대바 사바송 다 되는 손을 대바 되는 뭐비 되는 뒤되는 노드 되는 뒤줘야 사바송을 대바여바이나 내라 대바서 어때면 어때 가서 같은 것을 창조하지 말아봐
Did something okay. So then when looking at the opportunities, there are opportunities that pertain to oneself, and then opportunities that are external opportunities. So opportunities that pertain to oneself and opportunities that pertain to others. So starting first with opportunities for oneself, there are 5. So the first is being a human being. This is one opportunity. So the human basis is the best basis from which to practice if one has these conditions. Being born in a central region, so being born in an area where the practice of Dharma occurs. Having complete sensory faculties. This means that one is able to hear and see, and that one's mind isn't ill. There's no mental illness, so all these faculties are complete. The next is having a reversible karma, not having any among the 5 heinous crimes. So not having irreversible karma. And the 5 heinous crimes are killing one's mother, killing one's father, killing Arhat, drawing blood from a Buddha, or dividing the Sangha. So not having engaged in any of those negativities. And then having faith in the source. Here, the source is referring to the Dharma baskets, the Abhidharma basket, the Vinaya basket, the Sutra basket. So this here is having faith in this actual in the Dharma, in what is the Dharma. So that those are the 5 that pertain to oneself.
Wada ranju nga rangun tsangwaya tujin nga dunga zo tsangdos. Da jingun tsangwaya da sanje shun dang dangju den denpa nen da deje ju jen shi jine zo hos. Wada nga dunga da sanje jiden du shun bas. Danda sanje nga zo jiya de yo ma de ina sanje pepe keba nga zo je yo da sanje shun dang.
In this eon, okay.
Dangju den zina ane sanje ki chu songbi chu kanju tenju du nga zo 안으로 고야도 미토한지야요. 선지셔도 다주든 템바네다. 나 선지게 템바네요. 뭐도 템바지요. 말해서 말배. 뇌 템바도 상하게 템바가 내려요. 그래서 템바네다. 대진 주스나 대진 주스야 다 선지게 출 가부지는 출 선지게 출 로정 사바지게 뭐도 대진 주스 어디서 말배. 대진 주 예지신의 소스 다 추두게 된들에 현재다 가부지는 로부지게 된데도 어디 나대가도 상도스 란주가다 연주가 차선 뒤제가 상도요 그래서 말이야.
So the next are 5 aspects of opportunity that pertain to to others rather. So first is that the Buddha has visited, and when we look at our current life, we aren't stating that the Buddha has visited in our lifetime. It means that the Buddha has visited within this eon, within this kalpa. We have the historical Shakyamuni Buddha who has visited. So that's the first external opportunity. The second external opportunity is that the sublime teaching is being taught. So the teachings found in the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the Tenjur, the authentic Indian commentaries, are being pronounced. They're being taught. So that's the second point of opportunity. The next is that the teaching remains. That the sutra teachings, the tantra teachings, all of these teachings are in the world. They remain in the world. They're present in the world. So this is the third. The fourth is that there are those who follow it. This is referring to there are those who study. There are always new people participating in the study of it, and so on. So there are those of interest who have interest, who are followers in studying it. And the last is that there are those who care for others. And caring for others is referring to those benefactors who help to make sure that it's possible for the Dharma to occur. So it's speaking of benefactors, and Rinpoche said Ropacheken, those who are helpful, those helpers for the Dharma. So caring for others is sometimes translated as those with faith. It's sometimes translated as those who have faith, and it's referring again to benefactors and so forth. So these are the 5 external opportunities.
근데 매일 내내 어떤 가수를 요하면서 말이야. 딜레된 자체부터 안에 추가로나 줘도 그래서 말이야. 이 주제기나 제도를 해도 주제나 제도를 나 주제기나 제도를 어때 참아 누구로 왔다. 대인의 진료라 주주발로 컴피텐데 에진너블을 하버스 에진너버가지 여바 있나야 마시 전시르마도 신는 팬도 말보다 주되게 안에 지셔마다 대셔마다 든들랑다 타비랑다 사지 공부도 나모블 팬도 그러나 어떤 손에서봐
아마 대화 제 주비주 신카 the 대화 제 Chen dan drapudu sa tamba the shinka the sa dan shin.
아무 신가 다다나 신가를 또 맞아야 도다가 요구 말.
Okay, they last.
게제로. 니와도 저 대수돼 말에. 게제도 매버서잖아요. 아노고도 노를 선다 사다 최다 류던 좀 마산다 누구 지금 말어. 어제지하고 최들에 나 라주 가다 연주 가다 사도 최다 류 최대 말이다. Then
okay, so the sa, the dewa j, then chu dang the nimashar.
Sa no la ta bogi sa ta do ta ta ne chego maro gejen ro.
Lesser.
Nima ta so je ba ina chu do to me je ba.
Then kashi the selbuzu. So before I translated something, I wanted to translate it more clearly. So going back to the 8 leisures and 10 opportunities and the analogy of the field. So when the 8 leisures are compared to preparing a field so that it can be planted. So one has to remove the boulders, one has to till it and make sure that it's ready for planting. So the 8 leisures are compared to that. So one's removing the problems of the hell realm and the hungry ghost realm and creating this basis from which one can practice. So it's like creating a field from which one can plant seeds in and grow. And then the opportunities are compared to actually, once one's planted the seed, watering it and doing all of the things that are necessary for it to grow. So the first is removing it and creating this basis from which one can practice, and then the opportunities are like the water and the sunlight and the fertilizer and so forth that makes it actually grow. But it can't grow without the field being the basis first, and then it also, once you have the basis, it's necessary to nourish it in certain ways. And these 10 opportunities are for that. So I just wanted to make sure that maybe I already said that clear enough, but I wanted to make sure that it was clear. So in this particular life, we currently have this status. We currently have the 8 leisures and the 10 opportunities that are higher than a wish-granting jewel. If we have a wish-granting jewel, we can obtain the things of this life, but it won't be of any use to us in the future lives. The Dharma is something that will be of use to us in the future lives, and we have the opportunity in our hand to engage in that practice because we have these 8 leisures and 10 opportunities. So we have the basis from which to practice Dharma. We are able to practice Dharma. We are not leisureless. So it's for that reason that in our hands we have something more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, because it will ultimately be able to help us. The opportunity and the basis that we currently have will allow us to engage in pathways which lead to the higher realms. This basis we have allows us to engage in pathways which lead to liberation, allows us to engage in pathways which lead to complete Buddhahood. So this is why we say it's of such significance and importance and far outweighs or outshines a wish-granting gem. It's much more important than that. It's sona kali kapudu.
대화제든 저와 주성 메일을 단단가서 토도요아레스. 가술요아레스. What is Abbot?
Okay, careful. So right now we have this accumulation of the 8 leisures and the 10 opportunities. So it's important to be careful because we have this and utilize it for something of important or of great significance. So utilize it to engage in pathways which lead to the higher realms. Utilize it to engage in pathways which lead to liberation. Utilize it to engage in pathways which lead to complete Buddhahood because of the significance of what we have currently as a basis, what our basis is. Okay. So accumulating this is very, very difficult, and losing it is very easy. So first of all, this human basis, the meiden, is the human basis is very difficult to obtain, and there are 3 reasons that are reasons given to show its difficulty. It's difficult because the causes for it are difficult to achieve. It's difficult because there are examples given to prove its difficulty, and difficult because the numbers of humans are low. So literally just because of number, but in parentheses, translators note it means the numbers of human beings that exist are small. So because of number is referring to that. Sutrim Shintu Molam. Sutrim Molam Shintu. Molam. Sumbagare.
Leji le nabaso ngaki nabaji la kumarwe. Leji doa, leji diba, ane kasabara. Ta leji magawa pumbi, leji magawa, ngaki magawa, hiji magawa sumarwe.
Leso.
Ane leji magawa dala chini chonsung. Yi tang nga kangala chini sonsung yo marwe. Leji diba chewa takin rebat chewa yungre, nyawares. Ndingi yedare. 네 타마데 그ton르레 어디 류응아이 데바스 치바레스 류지고와 치와 네 총송되게 하당 라마이다 말치고레스 어디 주두가 그럼 주센트 어디 말베.
So the first point, that the causes of this human basis are difficult to obtain, has various reasons. First of all, in order to achieve a human basis, there has to be ethical behavior, an aspiration made for that experience or rebirth, and a practice of the 6 perfections. So in order to achieve a human basis, one has to engage in these practices. So first, when we're speaking of ethics, ethics is referring to an absence of non-virtuous activity. So if we were to look at virtue and non-virtue, we can look at it in terms of the 10 non-virtues, their opposites being 10 virtues. So the 10 non-virtues have 3 non-virtues of the body, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, 4 non-virtues of the speech, lying, harsh words, divisive speech, and gossip, and 3 non-virtues of the mind, harmful intent, covetousness, and wrong views. So their opposites are 10 virtues. So when one engages in virtue or non-virtue, there are results, and there are results are concordant with the degree of virtue or non-virtue that one engages in. So if one engages in any among the 10 non-virtues that are, one engages in them through one's body, speech, or mind. So these are the only way that one engages in action, through body, speech, or mind. So if it's non-virtuous action, the greatest degree of negativity that one engages in gives rise to rebirth in the hell realm. A medium degree of negativity gives rise to rebirth in the hungry ghost realm, and a small degree of negativity gives rise to rebirth into the animal realm. The same is true for virtue. The greatest degree of virtue gives rise to rebirth into the God's realm. A medium degree of virtue gives rise to rebirth in the demigod's realm, and a small degree of virtue gives rise to rebirth as a human. So virtuous deeds give rise to happiness, and non-virtuous deeds give rise to suffering. So when we speak of ethics being the first cause for the human basis, ethics is referring to engaging in virtuous activities, and that's referring to virtuous karma. Karma being a Sanskrit word that means action. It's just translated as action into English. Because it's very difficult to engage in virtuous activities through our body, speech, and mind, this is the first reason why it's difficult to achieve a human basis, because it requires ethics as the first part of the causes.
다들 뇌지고 나고도 사여바 있나요? 근데 뭐야 버지 버스. 뭐야 뭐 맞이나 아니 뭐도 잡아나 버스 말বে. 뭐라 당에도 가버거 주주 잡아거 잡아당로. 고와데 근데 사지 공부도 좀 해야나 사지 공부도 좀 줘래. 된도도 좀 해야나 된도 그래. 그 뭐가 가르쳐 주세요 말বে.
So if one accumulates these ethical behaviors through one's body, speech, and mind, engages in ethical behavior through one's body, speech, and mind, then also, in order to cause a human rebirth, it's necessary to have a specific aspiration. And the aspiration that one makes, or dedication that we call it also, that one makes, is like the driver of a car that points that car in the direction that it's going to go. So for instance, if one is engaging in virtue and is aspiring to become a Buddha and engaging in virtue for that sake, then this becomes a cause for Buddhahood. If one is doing it for the sake of liberation, then this becomes a cause for liberation. If one's doing it for the sake of a higher realm rebirth, then it becomes a cause for that. So the second part is the aspiration that one makes. So this is the second part of what causes a human basis.
tenere tempo marusan tane nungwa jebaina jema lota tang kondu chongtu mares wadan majebaina ane gawasa baina gawadul khatitele kondu ke mebazo yure lota ke mebazo yures ane gawag shaje leso ngolo tempo marusan tane nungwa jebaina lota tang kondu chongtu mares what is in summer.
But in order to get rid of a wrong view, it's necessary to analyze dependent origination, because just by making dedication, that won't eradicate wrong view. One must recognize that, for instance, when we look at killing, the abandonment of killing, we have to look at the emptiness of the action, agent, and object. So the lack of true establishment of the abandoning of the killing, the lack of true establishment of the person who is abandoning the killing, and the lack of true establishment of the object that one is abandoning killing. So one has to recognize the lack of true establishment of action, agent, and object, and then this is what can get rid of wrong view, and then eventually gets rid of anger and hatred as well. Just an aspiration itself alone won't get rid of wrong view. One must engage in this sort of analysis of the absence of true establishment of action, agent, and object because of dependent origination.
Jimba Jinja Labo Tombetons, Jimba Tamaina, Jimba Tansaru, Jimba Tambo, Jimba Tamasmonte, Dembo Maruba, Santana, Moajevaina, and the control of Lota Notu Maris, Tendab Maribeta, Chudin Sombaina, Sonjak Chudin, Sonabo, and then Chudin Songa to Ngalo, Dembo Maru Santana, Sanjiku to Jumo, Dendru Jutan, what the Nubaina, control the Lota Juntu Gosamaris.
The Dembo Madrupa Sanladana Luta Garshene the Yanju Surulang Chishining is Sebo.
Dembo Madruba go out Dembo Madruba Santamena, Kush Tabre was a strong revo Marvata, Control Lansmona, Control Gay, Negoa, Never Junuta.
Less so, going okay.
Don't need to be shared to do Control the Lotal Partner, Control the Lotal Gold Senu, when you caught it.
So, without looking at having the awareness of, I was just trying to find the connecting factor, I was missing something. Without having this awareness of the lack of true establishment of the action, agent, and object, then the virtue that one's engaging in, for instance, if one is generous, but isn't being aware of the lack of true establishment of oneself, who is the giver, of the act of giving itself, and of the person that one is giving something to, then it's not a very strong virtue. Even though it's an ethics and it's virtuous, it's not very strong. And in just a moment of anger, one moment of anger or one moment of wrong view will completely wipe out any of these virtuous behaviors or ethical behaviors that we've engaged in through our body, speech, and mind, if they haven't been properly dedicated with a dedication that recognizes the lack of true establishment of the action, agent, and object. So this dedication is coupled with the recognition of the reality of what one is dedication and of the dedication itself, the reality being not truly established because of dependent origination. So without this awareness, when one is engaging in ethical behavior, it's not as powerful and can be swept away very easily.
Büyük çöten doğu çöten. Çöten de şimdi ama şazımaz. Ama da şadi de nasıl çeken. O da bu kadar na bu niye son kadar şeyler o kuzur horu burujene çöten düzüyoruz. Çöten düzüyle de savura languyina lançayina jiyoruz burada. Lojiyoruz loji. Anı kuzu çöten diyeceğim. Çöten diyeceğim sadece kuzu malan yapıyoruz malan. Anı çiğge anı ne böyle sanki çöten diyor ne cevap çalışıyoruz. Malan yapıyoruz. Cevap peki sonsuza kalmıyor doğa. Çözüm diyeceğine. Ta çiğge
Shati the Chorten Zusun.
Shati söken ama diyor ama şazımaz. Ama da şati mi oluyor var. Koşa Gonga the Santan Woyota.
Dendru, Yimba, Mayimba.
Ama the Shati, Ama the Shati Moyota. Koshatil Taworo, Gonga.
Oh, Daken, Shati Daken.
Ama Shazuma.
Ale.
What the Pap Bokashi Vizerwa. No Urubujina.
Lesser.
You children the Jimbares.
Lesser.
This how was a launch in a long wind you are that. Savuguro. And loji a low. And no good children be the Sazadu and Malajas Malan. Chig Tanga, Bella Sanjay Chutadu, Najabu shoes. So then come in the Jasmutis and change.
Ama Molanjasam.
Ama in a bogin.
Okay.
Chig Tanga Chut and Bell Jabajaina, not to do Kabu shoes. Kitchen she was.
Oh, okay. Then a Sunsen Gampo.
Kitchen she was.
Ale Yansi.
Kitchen she was. Chusmu design, but Chusmu design. And the kitchen she was the Ujid Bogotege, Machu, Bell Chutadu, Kabu shoes. Kitchen she was with the Chantarachita.
Lesser.
And Chig Tang, then Nabel Cheta to Lobby shoes. The noble person as she said. Ta long last more, Cruise to them Jabu, and Chenmo Yongju Malam Jazu Ngal Malam Jagundus. Da Kozu Bel Chuta Chenmo Tanji, da Langu Malam Lobajan, Chu Mebazukan Yongshus, Malam Javasta.
Lamboche.
Lamboche, Langu in all. What the Jabal Long Temples Bel, Mozart Ram Chumra.
Oh, okay.
What the baby chicken about that?
Then Lango Lamboche Kakare.
Lamboche in the Langu in a kind of subways of the
Okay, the decent, the KO money. So there's a story about aspiration and the power of aspiration. So there was a woman who looked after chickens for a farmer, looked after a lot of chickens. I was trying to figure out if it was a chicken, or because in some stories there are animals participating in Dharma, but it's a woman who looks after a chicken, and she has some children, and they build a stupa. They construct a stupa. If I'm leaving anything out, I really apologize, but the moral will be here and the gist will be here. And they build the stupa, and they engage in a lot of effort, and they have an elephant, or a large animal, I think an elephant, helping with them to do the construction project of this stupa. So when the stupa is finished, either the mother or the children, it's not certain in the story, there is a prayer made. We'll say the mother makes an aspiration to be able to be a king of the Dharma in the future. And it's said that from that aspiration that was made, she, or if it's the child, he or she was born as King Treatise Detsen. Treatise Detsen. And then Treatise Detsen, ngay kepa molan jason, then kechin shewatsu yansik. Garwe.
Nga jabu yongoshu jabu. Jabu ta tsun desen ro da.
Then Treatise Detsen.
Nga kambu yongoshu shandala sita. Shandala sita yiniro. Ta tsun desen shandala sita. Ane what the Kenlu choose. Lebe bawan jone. Zuka ro rujin bel chutaro.
Then the Pugo Chi, the Chandrashita Yansi. Okay, so and then one made an aspiration. I guess the literal part is not important. The one made an aspiration to be a great scholar and was born as the great master Chandrashita. And Chandrashita was responsible in bringing the Dharma to Tibet with Padmasambhava to Sangik Monastery. So they formed the first monastery. So Chandrashita came and formed the Dharma, but there were some obstacles that had formed. So they invited Padmasambhava, the Shewatsu, the Inye Ketanson. Oh, okay. So Chandrashita went to the king and said that they were having problems with local deities, with the Sangik Monastery was having problems. So they invited Padmasambhava to Tibet to subdue the problems, and they were able then to prosper with the Dharma. So going back to the story, so one made an aspiration to be a king of Dharma, and he or she was born as King Treatise Detsen. One made an aspiration to be a great scholar, and he was born as Chandrashita. And then the elephant became angry at everyone's aspirations. And said, the garishene kon long langadu, the lambache long langangisene kon kitchen, kon jalpo. Yeah. Less so. Less so. Okay, then cheaper. So I just making sure I'm getting this correct. So then the elephant heard of these great aspirations that they were making, but he did all of this work and didn't feel to make this kind of making these aspirations. So he wished that it would all just be destroyed. So it is said that he was then born as the Kongitsen Jiwashima, the king Landemba, who's very similar to Mao Zedong in the sense of being a destroyer of Dharma. So he was born as Landemba. So this story is showing the power of aspiration, and again going back to the example Rinpoche gave of how aspiration is like the driver of the car that points it in the direction. We had one aspired to be a king and became King Trisen Jetsun, the great king of Tibet. One aspired to be a great scholar. He became Chandrarashita, a great scholar who came to Tibet. And then the elephant aspired to destroy the Dharma, and he became a Dharma destroyer king. So this is the power of aspiration. Lamboche got kakare.
Lamboche du chue me bazu kan jabu chi baro.
De Lamboche.
Chue me bazu suna ne ko me bazu to shus. No da log.
Nyamdu me bazugre.
Ta Lamboche de ta böl chue me bazu shus mala da saro. Lamboche de böl chue me bazu suna ne ko me bazu to shus mala da log.
Ropache.
Lo sheep.
The robe, Lamboche Ropache.
Lamboche ke böl chue me bazu ro. Mala da ro. Ta log de mala Lamboche mala da lo da is wrong.
Ale. So then there was a sheep who was helping also in the construction of this, and he recognized the wrong view of the elephant and said that I am making a dedication to destroy you. So you're making a dedication to destroy Dharma. I'm making a dedication to destroy you because you're that's wrong view, and you're dedicating to destroy Dharma. So Longdemba killed many monks and nuns. All monks and nuns.
Spear.
The tomb. Okay, so blacksmith. Su Genilu, the Landemba, the Hua, Landemba. So then also Landemba, if there were gods that, if there were gods that he could speak with and put to work as blacksmiths, he kept them, but he got rid of all the other ones. So that I think that's the point.
Lande Chenmo's Latin Jia Tola Lasa. Ngol dus dasha kan yere. Longtime dus dan had to ask her law in Rota. They are liable to they never can use.
Then the hla the garre, the go garshini there. Yeah, that's a blacksmith. Right? An iron worker.
Atse tak lagi karasuna.
So if they could understand if they could put them to work as blacksmiths and they could understand them, they would utilize these gods, and if they couldn't, they would. Rinpoche is saying Yushu, Genyi, like throw them away. I'm sorry, I don't. If I'm missing anything, I apologize. I don't think I am.
And Tula Content changes a mock dance. Then the Halu page Jabalon but the Temataka Leverta. And the Halu page to Jindata should do Ben Keon, Yero. Keon, then could Jabata on the Temate, then Jabase.
Little low.
Lante Saver. Luther.
Okay. So then there was a big religious dance ceremony. And someone came with a bow and arrow hidden underneath their jacket or just hidden. And Landemba arrived for this religious dance ceremony, and the person shot Landemba with an arrow and killed him. And this is the sheep's previous life, making the aspiration to get rid of the destroyer of Dharma. This is the reincarnation, if you will, or the life of that sheep who's made an aspiration, and basically, I don't want to use this word loosely, but the prophecy became true. His aspiration became true. His aspiration became true. It's not prophecy. His aspiration manifested. So here we see the example of a virtuous activity, building a stupa. But we find so many different results depending on the individual's motivation who were building the stupa. We see one had the aspiration to be a Dharma king and was born as Trisendetsen. One had the aspiration to be a great scholar and was born as Chenrezig. One had the aspiration to be a destroyer of Dharma and was born as a king that destroyed Dharma. One had the aspiration to destroy that destroyer of Dharma and destroy that destroyer of Dharma. So these results are all very different results, but the participants were participating in the same activity, which is virtue of building a stupa. So the dedication guides that action into experience. Yeah, it guides the action. Yeah, the dedication guides the action into experience. That again. So when we engage in virtuous activity, it's important that we have a stainless, pure dedication. That we make sure we include a stainless drama mepa, a stain-free, pure dedication. You can see the fault of the elephant's dedication and how this manifested into a negative or a fault. I think I might have missed one participant, but I apologize if I did. But I think that the meaning was conveyed of the story of how aspiration guides. So not only those two of ethics and aspiration, but then a practice of the six perfections, the practice of ethics, of generosity, ethics, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom. So one must engage in those six perfections as well to cause a human basis.
Jesu Paji to Russia, but the Candace Gurusana, and then also me Lieutenant Tovaris. May Joa Lampa is not switching good was switching to Shibukundua, Ithaca. Then I Mel Joa Lansadu, and then also Kamba, Sayata, Yabure, then the Monta Yore, and then Longship and Gurua. What the Jimba Tavers, Jimba Marga, switching Jimbaji, switching May Lieutenant. Jimbe Longshue de Nudo, Jimbe Longshue, teach it there. Tutin Latin de Torres, Jimbe Longshue, teach it there. Zebin Dantes, that may Lieutenant, you don't want it. Zebin Jabo. Zebin Devin Samara, Zebin Dantes, Jumbe J, Jundred and Jabutela, Nevachevozi, Jumbe J, Sante J, Sante J is sensation to what there. Things are going to be better. Louis dress and that lot there, share him, share up. Take it in the call to her, Nazungo to Eldrea, schedule Drea or to the Marita.
The Korwa Shiji, the Nesum, the Kanga Yuna, share up, got it.
다 가도 쉐러 되게 가리는 메시버 몸을 가는
Okay.
ABC 쉐두 메시버는 가는
I see.
가리는 수 몸이 가르시버 더 메시버는 가는
Okay.
어떻게 룰이죠.
So the practice of the how the six perfections relate to the manifestation of this human basis are as follows. We can track each of them and what they create. So in Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, we find these explanations where it states that from ethics comes happiness. So happiness is referring to a higher realm rebirth or human basis. So this human basis that we have is created from ethics. So that's what's meant by that. Through generosity, the enjoyment. So the things that we have currently, our house, our car, the food and the drinks that we have, these are considered our enjoyments, and these are a result of previous generosity. So our human basis, that happiness, is from ethics, and the enjoyments, the things that we utilize, are from generosity. From patience, one has a good color. One is attractive. So looking attractive, having a good physical appearance is or translated literally as good color. One has this by engaging in previous patience. So this is the third perfection. The fourth perfection of effort. From effort, one has charisma or great presence. So if one has great presence or charisma, this is a result of previous effort that's been put forth. Through concentration becomes peace of mind. So if one has a very peaceful mind or calm mind and is able to concentrate and then ultimately single-pointedly concentrate, then this is a result of a previous engagement in the perfection of concentration. And then from wisdom, one has great intelligence. So wisdom refers to any state of knowing, because there are many things that we do not know. So wisdom is an abandonment of an ignorance. So if one is wise of something or has wisdom about something, there's an abandonment of that ignorance. So the abandonment there are many different types of ignorances to abandon, and by doing so, we eventually are able to abandon cyclic existence altogether, abandon our lower realm rebirth, abandon the higher realm rebirth and achieve liberation, and then abandon through abandonment of the obstructions to omniscience, which are imprints of the afflictions, liberation with remainder, if you will, the remainder of the obstructions to omniscience. So one can abandon those and become completely enlightened. So there are many states of unknowing to abandon, and wisdom allows us to get rid of ignorance. So this is how the six perfections manifest in our physical form. So this is those are the six.
What the Jew going to never go, they mara. I don't remember Tansha, she's super into Drushiba, what the inside of her.
Boo, Dong.
Jew going to never go, big going to never go. But that's how you get in this room, whatever. Jason Lurbe Milon as you have, and the Loja Jalia, Jasu Tonga, Segin Yashin. What the you won't put Trebaina, what the Mamutunga, what the Sita Zamarbe, but the little not to me, Lieutenant to what 10 hours.
So the causes of a human basis, of achieving a human basis, are difficult because creating the causes are difficult. One must have an aspiration for it, and one must, creating causes are difficult because one must have ethical behavior, have this aspiration, and then engage in the practice of the six perfections. And then there are examples to show how difficult it is, and one example is imagining if a blind sea turtle every 100 years came to the top of the ocean And somewhere in that ocean, there was a golden yoke. It's a circular yoke floating. And that turtle just happened to pop its head through that ring. This blind sea turtle that comes up every 100 years. It just happened to pop through the ring. This is how rare and random the human basis is. So this is what the examples of its difficulty means. This is an example of how difficult it really is to have this human basis. And this human basis is of great importance, and we currently have it. Strong Nepagawa. Ju Nepagawa. Bu Nepagawa. More, okay. Lesser. 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 Tuchena. And then the last is that the numbers. So if we look at the numbers of beings that are in the hell realm, there are the most numbers of beings there. If we look at the next numbers, the next most are in the hungry ghost realm, and then the next most are in the animal realm, and then human realm. So we see there are very few, if we're looking at it in these terms, of beings that are actually in this human realm, the human basis. There are much greater numbers in the lower realms. So this is why the numbers, the difficulty. So we have these three. The causes are difficult, examples of its difficulty, and then the actual numbers themselves. So these are the three. So we currently have this human basis, and we do not know when we're going to die. We maybe can live to be 100 years old at the most, but we can't even be certain of this because of impermanence. We have this momentary nature where we are disintegrating moment by moment, and there are coarse forms of impermanence and subtle forms of impermanence. Last Sunday we're going over impermanence, coarse and subtle forms. So we are under this command, if you will, or this influence or control. We have this basis, but this basis can perish very easily because of impermanence. If there isn't a future life, then none of this discussion matters whatsoever. But the fact is that there is a future life, and when we die, that's where we will go to our next life. And our future lives are endless, and our previous lives are beginningless. So we have beginningless previous lives and endless future lives. So this discussion is relevant. This year's rice crop comes from a previous rice crop. That comes from a previous rice crop from a previous rice crop. There is no non-rice crop that creates rice crop. It's always a rice crop that creates a previous rice crop. Likewise, previous lives are similar. This is similar to previous lives. Where did this life come from? Is there a doubt that maybe it is our parents' consciousness? But it's not.
는 파마 개바 이나 보고 개바 이고.
If the parents' consciousness were that of the child's, then if they were scholars, the child would be too.
어때래고 말해서.
But this isn't always the case.
바드는 용 말해서 바드는 말이야.
It's from the bardo, from the intermediate state, the consciousness.
아마 저것도 신간나무지 밤이 고다니듯이 나 바도 되는 용은 어떻게 얘기래. 손도샤한다 말이야. 는 가서 잡아자고.
So the womb of the mother is similar to a field that a seed is planted into, and the intermediate states consciousness. The consciousness comes from the intermediate states when the secret substances of the parents unite, and then the womb serves as a field for the baby to grow. But the consciousness itself came from the intermediate states consciousness, and the womb serves as a field, and the Pami Kucha. The Chen.
So then
there is a union of the male and female secret substances, and then this union creates the basis from which the consciousness of the intermediate state can enter. So next life is like leaving an old hotel and moving into a new hotel. It's like discarding this old set of aggregates and moving into a new set of aggregates. So we're going to take a 5-minute break.
That was actually my fault.
No, all very important information for all of us.
Curious.
I didn't know there were 5 missing texts in the Tanjir, so it's all new information.
Now you know.
So the human basis is of great importance, very important. And what we should do with it, or we should utilize it to engage in the practices of the pathways which lead to the higher realms, the pathways which lead to liberation, and the pathways which lead to Buddhahood. So the higher realm path is a pathway which includes the practices of going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, engaging in ethical behavior, which is an abandonment of the 10 non-virtuous activities, and acknowledging one's downfalls if he or she has engaged in a non-virtuous activity. In order to go for refuge, one must have the 2 causes of refuge. Juni lasun. Juni lasun shida. Nietzsche. So the 2 causes are fear and faith. Gongame Pachig.
What the Pogo Chiles was she was, could John the Juji Song was, and the Pogo Kajian Chiles one could Pomal Jew was, Pomal Children was. What the doublest?
It's similar to an example of if a small child encounters a dog and becomes scared. The first cause of refuge is present, fear. And then he or she runs to his or her parents to save them. And then the second cause of going for refuge, in this case to the child's parents, is their faith. So fear and faith become the 2 causes of refuge.
What the general Juji Song was. And then she now will title Jabin about the Sanji member than I Sanji Kunju, and then Madan Kunju, and the Genu Kunju from the Yichen, Joseph what the double is.
So, fear in this case is fear of suffering. Fear of the suffering of aging, sickness, and death, birth, aging, sickness, and death. And then the faith is referring to having faith in the basis of the 3 jewels. And here one looks at the Buddha jewel as a doctor, looks at the Dharma jewel as medicine, and the Sangha jewel as a helpful aid or nurse. So one has faith in and looks at these 3 jewels in this way.
Yana Joe Demotion Tanzibos, Hajaman Buddha Joris, Dungel Joe Tourist, Joe to be Jusen Garasana, Danger Rama to some Pichibu in Beige, Demoji,
Nanda.
Rama to some Beige. Yana Joe Demotion Tanzibos.
So why is Buddha Shakyamuni an appropriate basis for refuge? Why? What's the reason? And the reason is given in the commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition, where it states that you alone are the one who taught the Four Noble Truths, or were able to know the reality of the Four Noble Truths. And it's for this reason that the Buddha is the ultimate refuge.
What the
So if you think about this over and over again, slowly refuge will develop or form.
And so
the next is, so that's going for refuge. The next is engaging in ethics, which is an abandonment of non-virtuous activities, which we've gone over. And then acknowledging one's downfalls, confessing one's negativity is the third.
What the Yabutojo song could shadow Diba Ledunge, Diba Saba in a Luigi Diba Diba to San, Diba Tamena, and Del Dunge Jungus, Kaji Sendel Jungus, Tunju Jugule, and Kaji Joa Shamal Jungus, Jenen Jugule,
Lesso,
Kaji the Neti Shamashamadval Jungus,
Lesso,
what the Lantajan Jugule, Les Mung Debute, and Diba Shamatuba, you know what the
misdeeds will give rise necessarily to suffering if they have not been purified. If one hasn't engaged in purification, an acknowledgement of one's downfalls through formal process, such as application of the four opponent powers, then no matter how many eons go by, if one has committed non-virtuous activity through one's body, speech, and mind, those actions will necessarily ripen into suffering if they have not been purified. Oh, that's cool. So there are three different types of results. Karma that gives rise to a result in this particular life, karma that gives rise to a result in the next life, and then karma that gives rise to a result in many lifetimes later. When I say karma, actions that give rise to result this life, next life, or many lifetimes later. So there are three karmas and how they result.
That's until Diba Sagre, Goa Sagre, Tea Debude, and the Joa Shama Pajal Candes University. Goa the Sane, Debudoa the Mayuba to Goa Degribes. Goa Degribata, Diba Sane, Dunget Mayuba Diba Demarota. So I shall Jobajuko, so get them maybe two about the name of the late Tabanjurus. Goa Magile Sane. David the water doing Mammy Bato, led never in a late Taba University. The water Magi led Sane, David the water doing Madubato, who never behavior. Taba Imtanus. Get the late son and getting Yabal and Gabaina, and Josh Mashamal, the water doing a Carezungus. So I shall so much go. What the Shidama, Trutamaji, Laji Jauta.
So in the question arises then, how do our actions have the ability to give rise to experience in the future if they are impermanent? They must be permanent. So this debate comes up in the Mulya Madhyamika Karika, Nagarjuna's root wisdom text, where the question arises is, how does an action that is extinguished after its moment, the moment of engagement, how does that give rise to a result in the future, unless it's permanent? And the answer is that it is not permanent. It's the action ceases, but the potential of that action to give rise to a concordant result does not cease. So the potential for its result, the potential, or it remains only in potential, and what its potential is what's concordant with it. So it remains until there's conditions present for that potential to ripen into what its potential is. So this is how actions, virtuous or non-virtuous, and in this case we're speaking of non-virtuous actions that have not been purified, give rise to experience but are not permanent, because once the action's completed, the moment after that, the action itself is over, but there's a potential that remains in the form of an imprint or a predisposition that gives rise to experience. But the action itself is extinguished and it leaves potential. So in the Vibhashika school, or the Great Exposition school, so Rinpoche ended by saying the various tenet systems have different views. In the Vibhashika school, or the Great Exposition school, the view is similar to depositing money in a bank, that the action itself ceases to exist, but this potential is deposited. Then kabar shagdu yichinaba sheba pakcha garre.
What the hell they are? Never yours, chumas, tell chumas alogres. Goasana, Devadoa Yungure, Chusagmares.
The nupa.
Divasana, Dungayungure, the lady Chusogmares. Shadow Majene, Jimmy Dungayungure, and Shadow Majene, Jimmy Doayungures. Doing what chumas hours, the never yours.
And then the Tenjer dan Drabudu then, your mother.
The never Jilawa, the never.
Nietzsche nupa lagwe.
They could put the on just and also bang and sing them more. The noble.
So it's in a very core. I was saying it's kind of very similar to the way with the consequentialist would state it, that it's a predisposition that's left in the form of a potential or ability. But Rinpoche said it's really using the analogy of the bank is really the best way to do it, in a coarse way of looking at if one puts in, engages in a good action, then a virtuous ability, the word Rinpoche, nupa, a virtuous ability remains in this bank. And it's not storehouse consciousness. I want to make that clear. It's different than, because the Chittamantran school has a storehouse consciousness that this kind of sounds like, but it's different. It's in the mind, mental consciousness itself, where this ability or potential lies. So if it is not purified, then the negativity will necessarily later give rise to experience of suffering. And if the virtue isn't extinguished, then that will give rise to happiness. So this is the Great Exposition School's course explanation of how actions give rise to experiences. The actions cease, but the ability of these actions remain unless purified, and unless they're removed from the bank, Rinpoche said. Oh, I see that. Okay, I see the subtle difference. Ranjupa, okay. Then the Sheda Mawa, Yichi Nama Sheba Dandrapo? Okay, so I'm just trying to see the subtle differences here. And then the Great Exposition School has this place where there is this ability, where these are stored, that has this ability to give rise to experience. In the Sutra school and the Middle Way Autonomy school, there is a real specific understanding that it is the mental consciousness that holds the predispositions that have potential. So there are actual imprints that abide in the mental consciousness itself, that give rise to this experience. So the Ichi Nabasheba Pacha the Nuba Yure.
Kuja iji nawashi bala tandu te, iji nawashi ban jawalem shi shi ruji kuyo to sa. Lomi le tenji tan tuzu ki iji nawashi ba te kanza re se. Kanza yinbi iji nawashi ba juwa re se. Tali tsenji iji nawashi se re se. Kanza ka tsenji re se. Kadu ka tsenji ina kadu mi chakro. Kanza ka tsenji ina kanza mi chakro. Kanza ka tsenji iji nawashi juwa re se. Te tulu bacha chak re se.
So in these schools, it's the person. It's in the person where the ability is deposited, and the person and the mental consciousness are used interchangeably in this case. So the person and mental consciousness, that which goes to the next life. So the person, the being, the mental consciousness, that which is the traveler to the future life, is where these potentials are stored in the Sutra school and the autonomy school. So when a rice sprouts, and you see a little sprout, the rice seed is no longer there, but then it grows even more. That's that seed's potential to keep it growing. That potential, that ability of the seed is still there, making it have the power to grow more. So you see it sprouts and then it becomes bigger. That's that seed still working its potential. So it's similar to this. And I'm sorry if there's the subtle difference. We'll have to look up in the tenet systems. Jayan Sheba's maps of the profound, the entire tenet systems are translated in English. So if anybody's interested in these differences that I can't distinguish, you'll easily find them in there.
That sense on but the Kunji Jinashis. Kunji Jinashis the Nalamangin Lagata. The Kunji Nashi Kaduina Yudu Maris. Nalamangares. Lori do no Mosun Jeba. The Jutana Nalamangas, you marve. But the Nalamangas over there. What they Kunjisana go out on Magi Pacha Golo, dating the Jagris. Pacha Kunti, the Jabi Jin, Kunji Jinashis. The Gonzales.
The Nanglamane, the Trogo, the Dudu, then Natsu Gechisheng and Trogo Jigadu. The Nanglamane?
Me Zubun Zebel Chabachi because Anun Dakogoro. Dakari in the Sebugo Maro.
Okay, the ascertained but not the Datayan. The Sansan Trogo Dudu get the Sinzi. Okay, so the mind only school has this idea of a storehouse consciousness. That is a specific place in the mind, mental consciousness, that holds on to these things. So the mind-only school has a storehouse consciousness where virtue and non-virtue are stored. And it's said that this, when we look at the categories of the 7 types of consciousness, this would fall categorically under the consciousness to where the object was apprehended but not ascertained. So that's one among the... So the storehouse consciousness would fall into that category of consciousness. And the low rig and the 7 consciousnesses. And it's Nanglamane.
Oman Tanjo was the Le Shibale, Gi Le Shibale, and then Debuto Yunguris, Megi Le Shibale, and then Debuto Yunguris, Shiba Noburis, Shiba Nobu.
So the Prasangika school uses the word of a continuation of, or continuum of the action. The continuation, or the continuum of it. So that's the word that the Prasangika consequence school uses, the continuation of the action. And it doesn't mean it's the action continuing, but it's a potential. The word potential, again, or ability, but it's that is what how it's explained in the consequence school, as a continuation of it. So if someone dies, so Meshiwa, gar Jawa gar the mesh. Gapa gapa gapa.
Gashes gawa the showa. Gawa zana all marbe. Showa dead. Gashi what is Madaba is marbe. What the Nijilado, Lengaba. Gi Lengaba. Gi Lengaba and Jebere. Gi Lengabin Gaba. Then the way you do English.
So suffering and virtue are continuation of an end of an action. So the end of an action's continuation of the end of an action gives rise to happiness and suffering. So an action ends, and action ends, and action ends, and the continuation of the cessation of that action is this ability. So that's the continuation of the action, the ability that continues. Virtue, happiness, non-virtue, to accumulate suffering. So when we this word gapa, when a human ends, ceases to end, or dies, this would be similar to... Dead dying. Dead dying. The gaba ni, death dying. Le gaba, dead. Shit. Then the tenjor, le gaba.
Lengaba ngoperes tan deberes. Gaba tan debeyor, gabin gaba. Tenu de wayumure, dongeyumure.
Gabi.
La lenga yene no le jang, debe yata nyori bachis. La lenga. Yani keba sumba yinaya, tenu le shiba gabin gaba. Tal de wadu dongeyumure seta.
So the extinguishment of action, of the extinguishment of action, of the extinguishment of action is what causes the results of happiness and suffering. Like Gapa, it's translated every time I see it as extinguishment or the ending of action. But there's some, Rinpoche is showing the etymology to me of the Tibetan word and how there's extinguish can be extinguishing or extinguished. It's this conversation we have about dead and dying. So it's the dying of the karma. Dead. Then the lay. Shiva. Lay Shiva. So I think it's the dying of the karma because it has a potential, so it's not dead. I think that's what the wording is here. The bottom, the essence of this is that the karma stops, the action stops, but it continues on in the form of this ability. So it's maybe it's that the action is dying, and what remains is its potential. So the action isn't. I'm going to have to look at the Mulya Madhyamika Karika to get the exact wording on this. And I believe that it says that it's the extinguishment of the action that gives rise to the potential.
What done the smooth things are about Shene le Gawasan Doa Yungre Debasan Dunga Yungres. And doing you know later, let go out the Mago Sane, they would do what the thing in my own, but later you are best. So I should go. Get them maybe 2 buttons, Nanas, later Taba Himatas. Sane and the Mammy but Nebis. So what you go on. Get them Ghana, getting you but Gabayina, and the Joashaman do what to do contest. To watch it all, the Trutamaji.
Okay. So in the questions posited by Nagarjuna, if one can experience happiness and suffering, and this is a result of action, then if the action was completely ended and there was nothing left of it, then it couldn't give rise to the experience of happiness or the experience of suffering. Therefore, I think the word dying is the extinguishing is the, if I'm not mistaken, is the appropriate word to be using here, because it does have the ability to give rise to the experience in future lives. So therefore, the action itself isn't permanent because the action itself is ceasing, but it is only in the sense of dying because there's still a remnant of ability or potential that leaves after the after this end of the actual physical action that is engaged in through one's body, speech, and mind. So a person dying is impermanent, therefore karma accumulated is impermanent. Why is someone dying impermanent? Because there is a cause. So in dependence upon causes and conditions, a human being arises and engages in dying and death. Death and dying. Okay. So when we look at karma, the subject karma, we can say that it's impermanent because it is death and dying. It is dying and death. I guess the death would be when the fruition of the action actually takes place. So it's the dying when the action stops, and then the fruition of its result is the death. So it has dying and has death, therefore it's impermanent. So if Rinpoche used another subject and said it's impermanent because of being an arisal, because of being momentary. So the subject, karma is impermanent because it is momentary, because it is dying, because it is death. So the extinguishment of, or the dying of karma is a product. Therefore, it is compound, functioning thing. People dying are results. People die. The Meshiwa, the Depo-yin. So someone dying is a result because it is a result of an arisal. Because the Buddha stated that when there causes and conditions for arisal are present, then Abbot and Shiva, the death and extinguishing and extinguished occur.
All should be all should dead.
So
Gawa the Shiva.
Oh, Gawa then. So old age and death are results.
What the Gawa then Debrota. There Geshe Lharampa Ranjuba Insegre, Shirama Insegre, Dudubagi, Omatanju Insegrota. Shawasana, Tobayo, Shawa de Debumares, Ranjuba to Visitaba in La Wizard. In my brother, then Debu Becher, Chi Janji Kashi. What the Donata?
Ranjupa, the devil, Mayan. Okay. So then all tenet systems agree that becoming old is impermanent. But all tenet systems do not agree that death is impermanent, because the Middle Way Autonomy School does not state that death is impermanent.
당가서 내 거와 내 데부터와 용으로 내 디발레 데부터가 용어서 내 라누카라고 내가 못해. 사와시로기 저바지고 노들 그다마실랑시자고.
So for us to say that from virtue comes happiness and non-virtue comes suffering, there's a lot of difficulty inside that very simple statement. When we look at the Mulya Madhyamika Karika and the Buddhist pronouncements, we'll find that this is very intricate material that we're speaking of. In the tenet systems, they all have differing views. So if we think about this slowly, it would be very good. So it looks like we're about out of time. So we'll do the Stasha's.
Also, in the asking the death and dying of karma, if you commit a misdeed and you purify that potential to create misdeed in the future, is that also considered like a form of like death and dying of your karma?
The lay dana, then the lay shilu gapa shiwa, the ngatsu the nepa.
Le gapa sa anga ka shin batro. Ote mataba yamba kesha kayo marta. Le nga shin batre nga shin batre. Le nga shin ngobi te le nga ngobi imbeser. To go to woman with woman.
Then ngatsu deepa dana. Then the garre, like gapa.
Deba das on the debangan rota.
Deepa ga.
Nebi toji deba daba the mandala kreta. Nebo, enter dot, deba tanda juro, madaba in logmarisite.
The nebo, mitapa in la maribe.
When you do need to be shero, and you mungare, you gaba euro, to tabaret.
So, I see. The abandonment is permanent. So when one meditates upon the wisdom realizing emptiness and abandons misdeed of some sort, an affliction, then this is permanent. Because there is a cessation of it, there is an abandonment of it. So this is a permanent ending of that potential or of that ability. So you're asking if one engages in a purification, does that extinguish that imprint? And the answer is it gets rid of, it abandons permanently its potential, its ability. There's a permanent abandonment of its ability. So there are many scholars who will be looking at the cameras. So it's important to sometimes give difficult information like this, to teach things like this. The Dalai Lama could see this. The scholars check this. We'll check this to see what faults were said. So we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thupten Jinpa called it the continuation of the karma. He kept in Washington. He was translating it as that. It's always very difficult in the translation to make any of that, to make it make sense. But the continuation of it is its potential. So, the fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land, surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, a spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche, Gutsi Shapi Denrala. We do not have class next Sunday, just to remind everybody it's Easter, so we'll be taking the day off. Dead, done.